From the real estate, interior design, and design and build experts at the Penzo Group comes a podcast that covers all things home. For our team, a home is so much more than the sum of its four walls. It goes beyond. A home is our sanctuary, a place to create memories, build routines, and shape our futures. Through a series of captivating conversations with guests who are industry experts in their fields, we discuss their lives, passions, and their most personal and intimate spaces, their homes. Welcome to Beyond Four Walls, where we explore the soul of living spaces and celebrate the essence of what makes a house a true home.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Four Walls. My name is Gabrielle. Today I am joined by our guest, Cynthia Ferguson. Today I have the honor of being in her studio. So thank you so much for hosting us.
You're welcome.
It's exciting to be here because Cynthia is a well-known designer. You can find her work in Architectural Digest, Style at Home, House and Home, just to name a few. But also recently, Cynthia has been working closely with our Urban Blueprint team on one of their projects. So we'll chat about that. But welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for including me and having me today. And thanks for coming to our studio.
Yeah, it's good to be here. It's nice to have a change of scenery. Most of the time we're filming at the Urban Blueprint office, so this is good.
A little bit different than a builder's office.
Little different.
Yeah, a little prettier.
Yeah, a lot more fabrics and throw pillows I can see.
Yes. Yep. Always a space that we like to inspire our clients in. We like to host them here and have working meetings here, as well as this is really just a very large sample room.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'd like to start at the beginning. I'm curious what your story is, how you got into interior design in the first place, what your career evolution has been and how we got here to Cynthia Ferguson Design.
So my evolution is very typical, I think, to a lot of designers in that it was not a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
I had gone to McGill University and was interested in international politics and then ended up here. So definitely not a straight line. I fell into design. I was doing a project, a keep myself busy project, and refinishing furniture. It was the early 90s, folk painting was in, and stenciling was in, and I bought a piece of furniture that was unfinished and took it home to work on it. I was working on it in the garage with the door open, and in our neighborhood, we had lots of families that were walking by, and this lovely couple came by who were expecting their first child, and they asked if I would make them a piece of furniture for their son. And here we are 25 years later. So I truly started by falling into it, absolutely loved it. It became a passion. I opened a store in Toronto on Avenue Road, actually, same street that my studio is now located. And I did faux finishing of furniture in the 90s and then moved to the West Coast into a little town south of Vancouver, went back to school and decided I would do design. I worked at school for about 6 weeks, and then they mentioned the word portfolio and interviewing. And I absolutely panicked. I have not taken an art class since grade 8, not artistic. I am the first person to say I cannot draw a straight line. And then I thought, well, I should really go out and practice interviewing and showing my portfolio while it doesn't matter and doesn't count. And I went on an interview and got hired right away. So I switched all my daytime classes to night classes and started working for a firm from Hong Kong in Vancouver. And I worked all day, left at 4:30 and went to class all night. Oh, to be that young again. And then eventually ended up back here in Toronto about 24 years ago now and hung out my shingle and worked for myself and have been working in residential design ever since.
Wow, what a great story.
Yeah, it's not the typical. It's not a second career for me, but wasn't my planned career path at all. And I can't imagine doing anything else. Not a chance.
Well, that's so fortunate to be able to work in a space you're so passionate about and that came so organically, really.
It really did. Yeah.
That's amazing. So that leads me then, I guess, to another question I had. I mean, you are a self-proclaimed maximalist. Your designs are very bold and bright. There is lots of unexpected color pairings, layering of patterns and fabrics. Was that always the case when you were working in the garage?
Yeah.
Or has it evolved over? I mean, I'm sure it has evolved to some degree, but were you always a maximalist?
I would say I was always a colorist.
Okay.
And I would say that I really, truly get that from my granny, from my maternal grandmother. She was unbelievable with color and interiors. And my mom is an incredible decorator herself, not by trade, but by practice. And I think my color sense really came through my mom and my granny. And color always brought me joy. More than anything, it brought me joy. And I think that playing with color patterns was something that I was very good at innately. And so I couldn't draw a straight line, but I could work with color. So I think that was sort of where it all started. I don't feel that I was ever destined for the beige interiors or gray interiors. Color just really makes me happy. And I think that we often will wear color on ourselves, but then we're too scared to bring it up into an interior. And I think for most of my clients, that's the gap that I'm bridging is don't be intimidated and don't be fearful of color. Don't worry about a trend or whatever they're seeing. Color is timeless. It's been around forever. What we're seeing in the design industry will be 5 years out before it's in everybody's homes.
Yeah.
So I think that always pushing the envelope and bringing color to homes has been something that I feel very strongly about. I feel a lot of our homes are very bland and very colorless and really truly look like everybody else's home rather than the individuals who live in that home. And especially in Toronto, I feel people are very reserved. So pushing that envelope has been something that I gather I have gained quite a reputation for.
Yeah, no, that was actually one of my questions because, I mean, we see it through Urban and Homekin. There is a reservation to do really splashy colors and patterns. And I mean, I understand it. People are spending hard-earned money. They don't want to make a mistake with things they consider risky or that are just, not an obvious choice to them. They have to live with it for a while. How do you get those kinds of clients to dip their toe into the waters of color and pattern and so forth?
I think that conversation has truly evolved over the last, I'm going to say 5 years. And the conversation when I first met clients used to be, we love you, we want to work with you, but we don't want to do color. And now I would say the conversation starts with, oh my gosh, I want color. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So I think people have become a little more climatized to seeing color in interiors now. And, we're definitely having a very big English moment.
Yes.
So everything that is English, which is tons of color and tons of pattern, is very in. And I feel the more we see imagery on Instagram and Pinterest, the more we become used to it. I'm the first person to say, oh my gosh, I never would have painted anything mustard yellow. And now I'm planning a mudroom that's all mustard yellow because I'm used to seeing it. And I've become, it's becoming more accepting. And I think the more you're exposed to, the more you're open to. So I think, shelter magazines, House and Home, Style at Home, Rue, all of those in Canada that are showing some projects with color have allowed people to become less afraid.
Right.
I also think a lot of my clients are in their 40s and 50s, some are in their 60s, some are in their 80s, and caring about what everyone else thinks matters less and less and less as they get older. And a lot of my more senior clients frequently are widowed females. and are in their 70s and 80s. And it's like an all out
Showtime.
project. Yeah. I've never had a pink bathroom, and I've never had flowers, and I've never had, the autonomy to really decorate without consideration for others. So those are actually my favorite projects, are the women who are on their own, who are doing their condo, and there's just nothing held back. And it's truly a project for them. And that is amazing to do.
For sure. That's so interesting. Yeah, because I know even just for myself, for the most part, I'm lucky my husband doesn't care too much. He trusts my judgment. But at the end of the day, I still want him to like it and will
absolutely
ask his opinion. So yeah, I can see how that would be very liberating and fun to work on.
I think it is. And I think for a lot of, there's an evolution in the design process as a family grows up. And initially it's, the couple, and this isn't our forever home, so we don't want to spend too much money.
Right.
And then it's the couple with a young family, and the conversation is around durability of fabrics, and we have a dog, and we have young kids, and I don't want to worry about fingerprints, and I don't want to put the red velvet rope across the living room, that sort of thing. So it's about family friendly finishes and textiles. And then as the kids age up and are off to university, it's, oh my gosh, the kids are gone. I want a family room sofa that isn't made from Sunbrella, and I want something softer. So I feel like there's an evolution that happens. And then when you sort of get into, downsizing the family home, the conversation is much more about what do we truly want, as opposed to what do we need to do based on who's living here.
Right.
And I think that is freeing. For a designer, it's way more fun because it's finally about what they truly want as opposed to sensibilities.
So how do you balance your own personal aesthetic and your clients' taste? Because obviously they come to you having seen your work, liking what you do, but still there are nuances to personal taste. So how does that work?
So I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that I'm not decorating my home. I'm decorating the home of somebody else. So my own personal taste doesn't really factor into it as much as I think the trust does. I think trust between a designer and a builder and the client is so imperative to the journey that you go on. And I've actually often equated renovating and decorating and designing to pregnancy. And that, there's that honeymoon phase where everyone's so excited and it's the beginning of it and it's so great. And then, the bills start coming in and the project wears on and it's like, oh, it's getting a little bit long. And then there's inevitably a time where heads are meeting and, budgets are really getting tight and you're getting towards the end, but you're not there yet. And everybody has decision fatigue and financial fatigue. And then you deliver the project and they've moved in and they have amnesia about the pain and the difficulty. And it's so great. And they call you and they do another project. So I think that, building the trust and the rapport with the clients is imperative, first of all. So transparency is really important. I think understanding that you're protecting their budget and you're really the client's advocate is so important. So as much as I may want them to do some, unbelievable, ridiculous chandelier that I found, combing, stores in London or at a market in Italy, what's best for them is what's important to me, while still pushing and delivering a product that would be better than what they would have anticipated or what they would have done on their own.
Right.
So I think it's a balance as opposed to my own aesthetic. And everybody lives so differently. I mean, if we have 15 projects going on right now, we have 15 people who have different tastes and a different journey and a different way of working. And everybody has the different pieces of this puzzle that are important to them. One may be obsessed with lighting. One may be obsessed with plumbing fixtures. One may not care about any of it and just wants to know if it's ready. So I think it's really learning to read people that's more important, and really learning to read what's going to be important to them and what will make the difference for them in the journey that we are on together. It's a huge amount of money to part with. And I often say it's crazy what we do. Like, here, please imagine this that you cannot see, you cannot touch, and please hand over the check for however much it is. It's really about the trust and about reading people and about listening. You've got to listen to what your clients want. So no, projects don't always turn out the way I would have wanted them to turn out. And if I had carte blanche and I had the keys to the house and, the ability to sign the checks, things might be different, but I don't think I've ever truly left a project where I've been disappointed with how it turned out in the end because of client decisions. I think there are jewel moments where you kind of think, wow, this is way better than I thought. And then there are others where we learn lessons.
Have you had carte blanche on any projects?
Yes,
That's
I have.
awesome.
I have.
That sounds really
I've had
fun.
carte blanche on a few. I'm within reason.
Sure.
It's not, let's go to France for 6 months and source and then fly back.
Yeah.
I have had carte blanche. It's interesting to me, actually, how many of our clients will come and, I ask all the hard questions. When do you want to start? When do you want to finish? How many people's opinions do we need to consider? Whose opinions are we considering? How much money do you want to spend? And often they have a lot of the answers until how much money do you want to spend? And they'll say, oh, I don't know. And then I'll say, oh, well, but you do. It's going to cost you $500,000. And they're like, oh my gosh, there's no way. And I'm like, see, we do know.
Yeah, you just have to get a reaction.
You do. You have to start asking those questions and narrowing it down, because sometimes people haven't done a reno for 20 years, or sometimes they've never done one, or sometimes they're reno addicts or decorating addicts, and they've done tons, so they know. And so we often will ask questions like, what was the last piece of furniture you bought? Where did you buy it from? That tends to tell me what their price tolerance will be. And then it's about me educating where we go from there. So while carte blanche is nice, it's not casting the net as wide as you might think, because I still have to consider, and I do, the respect of the property that we're doing. You don't want to over decorate or over renovate. I want to also consider the length of time that the clients are going to be there. If they're there for 5 years, I don't want to do anything that they can't take with them. We might do less built-ins and more furniture because we're going to be moving in 5 years. There's lots of things to consider. But yes, it's a lot more fun when there isn't a tight budget.
For sure. One thing I wanted to ask about is congruency in the home. I think most of us are capable of creating at least one space in our room that's fabulous, but if it doesn't make sense within the grand scheme of the home and flow with the rest of it, then how great is it really? And it's something I'm personally faced with right now because I'm working on a few different rooms. Most of us aren't redecorating the entire home all at once.
No.
So how do you make it flow with what you already have? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
So the one word that comes to mind is thread.
Okay.
There needs to be a thread through the entire project. I often refer to it as sort of, it's like a movie or like a television series, all of which we're all familiar with and can relate to. There is a thread or a storyline through the entire home that has a continuity to it. It does not mean I painted my living room blue and therefore the rest of my house needs to be blue. But I mean, for instance, in my home, for those people who have seen my home.
I have seen it. I watched the House and Home interview.
There is
very pretty
hot pink ceiling in my living room and navy blue walls. And that does not mean that the hot pink has to come out through the rest of the house.
Yeah.
However, there are moments of hits of hot pink. We go up to my bedroom, which, my poor mother, I painted black. But I have hot pink lampshades. So there's that continuity, that thread is through the house. I think one of the things that is imperative is that we look at the roadmap. And it's something that I know my clients who will listen to this will be rolling their eyes that, oh my gosh, she's talking about the roadmap. we want to do your living room. We're being hired to do your living room. But I'm also going to care about the dining room, the den, the kitchen, all the rooms that are attached. Because whether or not you're phasing this in, which is what most of our clients do, most of our clients start with one room, see how it goes, fall in love with it, hopefully, and then call for the next room.
Sure.
Or they know they want to do the whole main floor, but they're starting with the living room because that's what their budget allows. So if their budget allows one room, but they know they're going to be tackling the rest, I insist on coming up and designing the roadmap for the whole space. That doesn't mean that I'm giving them the drapery fabric for a room that we're not talking about, but it means that we're talking about what will happen so that, one, you're not redesigning each room each time, which will limit your design fees that you'll pay when you look at the totality first. Then it also allows you, if you've got a great designer, to just give you budget numbers for what the work would be. Not how much the plumber will be and the furnace and the this and the that, but just a budget. You know that to achieve where you want to go with your level of investment and the type of home that you have, you know, that you might need to spend, let's say, $10 in the living room, but $5 in the family room. And that then you get to see how much all of it will cost. Then frequently my clients will say, great, we're just going to start with the living room. That's what we're phasing. But then when they call me back for the dining room, we don't have to reinvent the wheel again. We've already created the roadmap. So we aren't starting the conversation again. There isn't all that heavy lifting at the beginning of the design concept. And we already know what we're doing. So they can call and execute whenever they want. And all it is us doing procurement at that point. But we aren't making mistakes. And that's the difference, is that if you don't plan for the totality or the congruence of a space or of a home, that's where you can make expensive mistakes, especially if you're renovating. We have a project right now in the annex that we're doing, and we've done the whole main floor. We've renovated it. My clients have said, we want to do the second floor next, but not this year. It may be 5 years. I don't know. But we have already put all the fixtures in the ceiling of the main floor to change all the plumbing for the second floor so that we aren't then going backwards and ripping out the kitchen ceiling that we've already done this time. So we've planned ahead. And that's what being able to make the roadmap allows you, so that you're not paying to drywall the same ceiling twice because you didn't think about it at the time. It's really important.
What about, I mean, having looked at your portfolio, your spaces are quite timeless. I wouldn't call them trendy in the sense that 5 years from now they're still going to look cool.
Yeah.
But how do you how do you think about trends when you're designing? You know, for example, the past however many years, brass fixtures have been so big, and you know, you see some homes that it's just like so much brass, and I know it's going to end up looking really funny at some point. How do you approach that?
So I think one of the things that I try to steer away from are trends.
Okay.
And I think that there is a difference between trends and classic design. I think exactly to your point, classic design will still look fresh and fabulous in 15 years. Trends are very much like clothing in fashion. There's such a link between fashion and interior design that when you end up with a trend like, oh, you know, we have to get the high-waisted, wide-legged pants this year, you know, in 3 years you look at that and you're like, oh, no, we're moving on. I think in classic design with interiors, the trick is to not include hot trends. So we have a client right now, we're discussing a green dining room, and she said to me, oh my gosh, I can't do green. It's going to smack of 2024. It's so trendy. And I said to her, really? I said, I did a green dining room 15 years ago. I said, I don't think it's a trend. I think it's a classic. But the hue depends on timeless versus trend. I think that materials are also can be quite trendy. And I think that we watch that so that you would watch that it's not such a trend. There are certain things that manufacturers, you know, steer us towards. Plaster, you know, lighting has been in for a very long time. Is that a trend? I don't know. You see it in the Puys in Paris and have for 40 years. So no, I don't think it's a trend. When I think about trends for interiors, I like to keep my clients on things like, bringing in vintage, bringing in pieces that are antiques. If that's a trend, that's okay because we're upcycling and reusing and it's not ending up in a landfill. So I think things like that are more important for when I speak to my clients about classic and timeless design. If they bring something to me that they've seen in a magazine and it's on someone's hot list of whatever, I might allow an accent table to sneak in, but we're not creating an entire room around something that to me seems like it might be a flash in the pan.
You've mentioned now throughout our conversation travels and such. I imagine you gain quite a bit of inspiration with that, but in general, where do you go for inspiration when you're designing and planning?
So I would say that the type of design that we do here is challenging in that because we use color and pattern so strongly, I really can't reuse the same colors and patterns in a project after project. People identify my projects by the color and pattern. So I always say that we are constantly hungry for new patterns and new fabrics and new materials. And I'm always hounding our suppliers here in Toronto. Y&Co and Memo are phenomenal for small batch patterns, which is what is our sweet spot. And I'm constantly asking them for new suppliers or new, releases that people have come up with in their artisans who create the small batch fabrics. Internationally, we definitely source a lot from Europe. I've spent a great deal of time in the UK over the last couple of years and have got some amazing suppliers who I love dearly, who constantly feed me with new product and new ideas. Creating our own colorways. We've done that with Christopher Farr Fabric as well, which allows us to extend the SKUs that we can offer to our clients, that we've got some of our own colorways that we've done, which is unbelievable to do and go and make your own fabrics. On top of that, we were just invited to Parma, Italy, to the show there, which was absolutely mind-boggling.
I can imagine.
I've never walked so many steps ever. It made High Point, North Carolina look like a tiny, tiny little show. And it was building and building, art in one building, antiques in another, mid-century modern another, lighting, gardening, the gardening pavilions that they had in these buildings for sale and statues and stone. And it was just absolutely unbelievable. And I think the more we get out, the more inspiration we will see. And I'm not necessarily speaking about finding a new light or finding a great table. Even just the lines on things, the lines on a mid-century modern chair that you saw, or the way that they used caning in some way that you haven't seen before, or the shape of a lamp. The lampshades that I found in Italy that were adorned with beautiful trims. I don't think of going that next step. I think of a little cute, tiny understated lampshade trim, because in North America, I keep hearing the word tight, that we're very tight with our design, as opposed to, something that's got some frill to it and some texture. So I absolutely fell in love with these lampshades that were everywhere in Parma. And we're definitely integrating that in design. So I think one of the things I definitely fall into is, yes, I do. I'm very, very fortunate. I travel extensively. But you also can get into periods where you're head down working, 14, 16 hours a day, weeks on end. And then you look up and you sort of think, oh my gosh, my own design inspiration is empty. I gave it all to the last 3 clients. And now you need to sort of fill your inspiration again. So I think, making strategic times to step away and get out and see inspiration. I'm going to High Point this week. I have not been to High Point, North Carolina, into the market. I haven't been since COVID. So it's been 4 years. And not that we order a ton from the US, but it's always good to get out and see. Again, not necessarily to find the right lamp or the right table, but just to see design lines or
New
finishes or
perspectives.
perspectives or different materials or different uses for materials. So I think you do have to get out. We're a huge funnel always for whatever's new and whatever's great out there. I'm very fortunate that some of the attention we've received, people now come to us and bring us things. So that helps me significantly that they're showing off, their new fabrics or they're a new lighting supplier or something. I always, I think it's really the limit is your imagination, but we need that starting point, that hook that gets us started with, oh, that's fabulous, but I'm going to use that, in a table, not a light. It's amazing what can come out of a little bit of inspiration and access.
So what are some things that have come across your desk recently that you would say are not necessarily trends, but just new things you haven't seen before that you're excited about that you could see clients really responding well to?
I think at the moment, I alluded to it earlier, the whole English design, British design. I think that I think we could use some of it in North America.
Yeah, for sure.
I think one of the things that I find challenging with Canadians is that we don't style anything. We don't accessorize. And a lot of my clients use the word clutter while I'm talking about accessories. And I feel that there's a fine line between having your home look like a showroom where anybody could walk through and buy your living room table and looking like your family lives in it. And I think, a lot of our clients are extremely fortunate that they're very well traveled. And collecting things is something that I continually urge our clients to do. Collections are becoming very, very prominent in the things that I'm seeing coming out now, where it may be a collection of old perfume bottles. It may be a collection of beaded necklaces that are displayed in a bowl on a table. It may be a collection of placemats that you have framed that were beaded in Kenya and you have them framed, or beaded work from South Africa is phenomenal. And integrating that into your design and your decor. I think telling stories is really important. So although we're not talking about, chrome and glass, it's really about storytelling in interiors and those layers on top of your credenza or your coffee table or your console in your front. Give a nod to who lives there. And I think that's something that's really important and we miss by not accessorizing. It's not clutter. It's the story of your life and of the lives of those who are in their home.
Yeah, personalization.
Exactly.
Very cool. So I know obviously you're a Toronto-based firm, but from what I understand, you have clients elsewhere.
Yes. Yep.
So how broad of a range is it? Yeah.
Well, that varies year to year
Yeah, sure.
and month to month. I would say in the last year or two, it has definitely been across Canada, especially during COVID. In COVID, we had amazing clients. I had a client in Australia.
Oh, wow.
We had a client who lives in Whitehorse in northern Canada.
Okay.
And then for the summer relocated to Norway, to northern Norway. And, I've had clients really from across Canada. I mean, during COVID, it was really quite fun because everything was by Zoom and it really was limitless as to who you could help and who you could do design work for, which I loved. Our typical projects, I would say, are anywhere in the cottage country north of Toronto, obviously. We've done a few projects in Prince Edward County lately, which has been phenomenal to do. Absolutely have loved working there. And then we have clients, of course, where everyone likes to keep warm over the winter.
Yes.
So we have clients in Florida. We've had clients traditionally in the Bahamas as well. I worked there for a number of years now. And there's always calls from new places that are really fun to think about. I sort of look at a map of Canada and hope that we can sort of check every province off at some point soon.
So I would like to ask you a question that we ask most of our guests. Two things. First of all, obviously we're trying to create a podcast here that's exploring the concept of home. And as that is your world, what does home mean to you, the idea of home?
I would say that a home to me is a place that is personalized for the people who fill the space. It is ever evolving, it is flexible, and it also has jewel boxes inside. I think it's really important to have a home that reflects the lives of those who live there in a way that talks to them, to their heart, to their passions. And I think making sure it's not generic and making sure that that it's definitely not your neighbor's house is really important. I think it should be passion filled, and it should be for the people that are in the home, not for the people who may visit the home.
Amazing. And having seen your home in the House and Home video, there's a lot of jewel box moments there, but I'm curious, out of the many fabulous rooms, what is your personal favorite space and why?
Oh, that changes. It changes by the time of year. I would say in December, my living room is my most favorite room. It still has a wood-burning fireplace. My home was built in 1931, and I didn't touch the wood-burning fireplace as we can't have them in Toronto anymore. So having a fire and the Christmas tree up and living in that room is by far my favorite room in the winter seasons. And I would say, other than that, possibly my family room, which was an addition when I bought the home. Oh my gosh, it had glass block windows back then, which is a material nobody should ever use for anything. And it had a pink shag rug. So it looks very different today. It's the room that's green with all the windows at the back, and I love that room for all the light that it has, the fact that I can see all the trees that I planted in the backyard from it. And I love the fact that it's green. It gives me good energy and it feels good. And it's the place that I like to end my day in, is there. So it's a room that I spend probably more time in than a lot of the other rooms in the house. Still love my black bedroom though. So that's also a good one, but I'm not there that often. So I would definitely say my living room and my family room.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. We really appreciate it. For our listeners, I guess the best way for them to find you is...
Probably Instagram, honestly. Yeah, it's at Cynthia Ferguson Designs, and I answer all my own messages. And so definitely that's an easy way to find me. And thanks so much for having me. This has been a pleasure.
So much fun. Thank you.
Thank you.